stop with all this assault rifle stuff right here. Don't you know those military-grade battlefield weapons are only used in mass murder? AR-15s are assault rifles. No, they're military-grade battlefield weapons. Wrong again. They're the weapon of choice of mass shooters. Yes, they are. Nope. R2. Slate, Everytown, even Obama said so. They can't all be wrong. Unfortunately, misinformation is still misinformation, regardless of how many people believe in it. And that's the nature of misinformation. It does not tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So, here's what's missing. In terms of language, gun control advocates prefer the emotional impact of words, rather than using the power of words to define, clarify, and thus substantiate the arguments they try to make. And this is made plainly evident by the way that they misuse certain words. For example, they love to misapply the term brandish to an openly carried firearm that is merely slung or holstered. They are also usually very confused about the differences between a semi-automatic firearm and a fully automatic firearm. And what's more, they like to confuse this with a machine gun or an assault rifle. Now, some may accuse gun owners and gun rights advocates of being pedantic or majoring in minors and squabbling over terminology and the minutiae of it, but it is this imprecise language that does not foster a good understanding of firearms. Neither does it serve as a good basis for good policy about firearms. The United States government has had something of a working definition of assault rifle at least since 1970. According to this report given about communist bloc small arms, it defines an assault rifle as a short, compact rifle, select fire, that uses an intermediate power cartridge. Interestingly enough, an AR-15 does not qualify for that definition, and sometimes on more than just one point. Now, by intermediate cartridge, they're referring to something that stands somewhere between a pistol or submachine gun round and a full-on battle rifle round. Stereotypically, or just typically period, an AR-15 fires a .223 or 5.56 round. And in terms of power, it is more powerful than a pistol round like this .45 ACP, but less powerful than this 7.62 by 51. And as far as that point of criteria goes, an AR-15 would qualify. However, there are more options that are available to AR-15 owners nowadays. A lot of specialty uppers and conversion kits allow an AR platform to fire anything from a .22 long rifle to a monster like this 50 Beowulf, which it has a whole lot more power than a 7.62 by 51 or 308. So AR-15s might or might not qualify on that particular criterion. But bear in mind, that's just one of three. In terms of being a short or compact rifle, that's a little harder to define. Just like there are various cartridge options that are open to the AR platform, there are various stock and barrel options that are open to it as well, and this can affect the overall length of the rifle. For example, on this carbine, it has a 16-inch barrel, which is the minimum allowed by the ATF before it becomes classified as a short-barreled rifle, and you have to submit yourself to background checks, paperwork, and taxes. This also has a collapsible stock. Some may opt for an even shorter barrel and subject themselves to the aforementioned taxes, but they can also go the opposite way as well. Some may prefer a more traditional look to it, a more M16 type look to it, with a full 20-inch barrel and a typical M16 stock. So AR-15s might or might not qualify on that point as well. But there is one last characteristic to consider, and this is the critical one that disqualifies most, if not all, AR-15s as assault weapons proper. And this critical distinction revolves around the fact that real assault rifles are select fire weapons, whereas AR-15s are not. With the flick of a selector switch, a real assault rifle can go from safe to fire to full auto. But an AR-15 does not have this option. Furthermore, an AR-15's internals are different from that of an M4 and M16. And I'm referring to the fire control group, but also the way that the lower receiver is milled out. And this is to prevent it from becoming easily convertible to full auto. Now, you can try to split hairs over bump firing and bump stocks, but that is just a technique to try to reset the trigger as fast as possible, and underlies the fact that AR-15s are semi-auto and not fully automatic weapons. And it is this very lack of a select fire ability that makes an AR-15 less desirable than an M4 or M16 or a real assault rifle for battlefield purposes. And therefore, you don't see any military, at least none that I know of, that issues AR-15s as its battlefield rifle. It's not a battlefield weapon. But the legitimacy of claims, whether or not AR-15s are real assault rifles, is of less importance than concerns over the role that these weapons play in murder and mayhem, or not. Now, headlines in articles appearing in Salon quoting Alternate, The Intercept, and USA Today tend to give the impression that AR-15s are the weapon of choice for mass shooters. And some people on Twitter seem to agree with this point. However, an analysis of these articles tend to show that they come up short in substantiating their position. And here's what's missing. Now, articles like this one in Salon, which is really only a reprint of an article that was done by Alternate, of all places, loves to go into detail about the weapon itself, how popular it is, how customizable it is. But what I want to know is it really true that this rifle is the #1 choice for mass shooters? Thankfully, articles like this do give us a list of mass shootings that were perpetrated by these evil AR-15s. Places like Aurora, Orlando, Las Vegas, Umpqua Community College, Sandy Hook, San Bernardino, and Sutherland Springs. 7. Weren't we told that there were at least about 1,500 mass shootings that have happened since Sandy Hook? What about the rest of them? And this shows a problem with gun control propaganda. In this case, it has to do with its definition for mass shooting. It used to be that a mass shooting was easily identifiable as a really gross, large, horrific event, say like Columbine or Virginia Tech. However, in recent years, I have seen the threshold for what qualifies as a mass shooting drop dramatically. And it started with a few journalists who decided to take it upon themselves to adopt the FBI's definition for mass killing and apply it to shootings. And voila, the statistics exploded. But they weren't just satisfied with that. Instead of just keeping it to 4 victims killed, they included the shooter in with that, and that upped the stats even more. Some have dropped the threshold further still to 3, and including injuries due to gunfire. What's more, they've tried to be creative with their labeling, instead of calling it mass killing, mass shooting, to a mass casualty event. It got to the point that even the left-wing news, opinion, and activist site, Mother Jones, called everyone else on it. They said basically, hey, nobody's going to take gun control issues seriously if we keep messing with the statistics like we have. So they came up with their own running tally of 93 incidents since 1982. Personally, I find this list to be very reasonable. It's very detailed, giving source links, the name of the shooter, his mental condition, whether he got his weapons legally or not, the casualties involved, both deaths and injuries, and most importantly, the weapons that were involved. And this helps answer the question whether or not AR-15s truly are the weapon of choice among mass shooters. The basic rundown is this. Out of the 93 incidents listed over the entire 35-year period, only 13 involved AR-15s, or about 14% of the total. However, we could narrow down that range to 2012, the year of the Aurora shooting, to the present, and find 38 incidents, of which 11 involved AR-15s. That's less than 29%. And that still means that a much greater majority of mass shootings are not perpetrated with AR-15s. I think we can safely conclude that the claim that AR-15s are the weapon of choice for mass shooters to be pretty thoroughly debunked, using no less than gun control friendly sources. And to further wreck the narrative, we can throw in the data point that mass shootings comprise a very small sliver of murders in this country, which in itself is a very small percentage of overall crime in this country. Therefore, the ultimate conclusion is that propaganda levied against this rifle is not meant to educate or even properly educate, but is meant to stoke up fear and suspicion about it. The truth of the matter is, the overwhelming number of these rifles are owned and operated by responsible persons.